The station had quieted, but Ethan could feel the tension in the air. Even though the alarms had stopped and the intruders had retreated, he knew this was far from over. He glanced at Lyra, who was standing by the viewport, her golden eyes scanning the empty corridors with precision. The cheerful smile from earlier was gone, replaced with the focused expression of a trained warrior. "Are you sure they won't return?" Ethan asked, fidgeting with his spanner. "They will," Lyra replied without turning. "They want me gone, and they will not stop until they get what they want. That is why our bond is important. Together we are stronger than they expect." Ethan swallowed hard. "Together, you mean fighting together?" Lyra finally looked at him, a glint of amusement in her eyes. "You have already proven yourself. You improvised, you stayed calm. Many humans would have fled. That is why I am glad you are my match. You are more capable than you think." Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. He was just a human, a simple engineer. How could he compare to a Valari warrior, trained from birth to fight with precision and speed? Yet Lyra's confidence in him made him feel ready to face whatever came next. The intercom crackled, interrupting the moment. "Station command to Ethan and Lyra," a voice announced, cautious but urgent. "We have detected multiple enemy vessels approaching. Prepare for immediate defensive measures." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Multiple? How many?" "Too many to count," Lyra answered softly, stepping closer to him. "We need to move to the armory and prepare. They will not stop until they have tried everything." Ethan nodded, trying to steady his shaking hands. He followed Lyra through the station, past long corridors lined with blinking consoles and hissing pipes. Every step made him more aware of his own mortality, yet he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a surge of purpose. He was part of something bigger now, and he could not run. They reached the armory, a compact room filled with weapons Ethan had only seen in simulations. Lyra moved confidently, picking up her standard plasma blades and checking the energy levels. She then handed Ethan a compact fusion rifle. "Hold it like this," she instructed. "You may not be trained like me, but humans have a certain adaptability. Use it wisely." Ethan took the rifle, feeling its weight, and nodded. He had repaired machines, disarmed faulty circuits, and handled delicate devices with precision. Maybe he could apply some of that skill here. Outside the armory, the station shook as the enemy ships fired. The metallic walls vibrated, and sparks rained down from the ceiling. Ethan's heart pounded as Lyra led him toward the observation deck overlooking the main docking bay. Through the reinforced glass, he could see dozens of enemy ships, sleek black and armed with energy cannons, closing in. "They are faster than our sensors predicted," Ethan muttered, his voice tight. "They are confident," Lyra said, adjusting her grip on the blades. "They underestimate human ingenuity. That is why you will be important. I will handle the direct assault. You will protect critical systems and create opportunities." Ethan nodded, swallowing his fear. He wasn't trained for battle, but he could think. He could improvise. And he would not let Lyra fight alone. The enemy ships breached the station's outer perimeter. Energy beams shot across the docking bay, lighting up the dark expanse like lightning. Lyra moved first, darting through the chaos with speed and grace, deflecting blasts with her blades and sliding across the floor with almost unnatural agility. Ethan followed, using the rifle to disable drones and disrupt enemy weapons. Every shot, every movement required focus. Every second counted. Despite the chaos, a rhythm emerged. Lyra struck and moved. Ethan protected and improvised. They were a team, though neither had realized how well they could work together until that moment. At one point, an enemy drone leaped toward Lyra from above. Without thinking, Ethan swung a panel from the wall, hitting the drone mid-air. Sparks flew as it crashed into the floor. Lyra glanced at him, eyes wide with surprise, then a smile curved her lips. "Not bad," she said. Ethan blushed but returned to action. He realized he was no longer terrified. The fear was still there, but it had transformed into determination. He could do this. Together they could survive. Hours seemed to pass in what felt like minutes. The enemy forces pressed relentlessly, but Ethan and Lyra anticipated their moves, outsmarted their attacks, and protected key systems. Other station personnel joined as they were able, inspired by the human and the petite alien working side by side. Finally, the largest enemy vessel, a massive black frigate, appeared above the station. Its energy cannons powered up, ready to strike a devastating blow. Ethan's heart raced. There was no way to stop it with brute force. He turned to Lyra. We need another plan. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Follow me. I have an idea, but it is dangerous. They navigated through maintenance corridors to the external docking bay. Ethan saw the ship's energy core through a viewing window. It pulsed, glowing ominously. Lyra explained quickly. If we can overload the core, it will disable the ship long enough for the station's defenses to finish the rest. Ethan hesitated. And what if it explodes? We'll be outside in the blast radius. Lyra smiled, calm and confident. Then we survive together. Ethan swallowed and nodded. He trusted her. They had already fought side by side, and she had never failed him. Now he would trust himself. They moved quickly, bypassing security doors and using the station's maintenance tubes to reach the docking bay. Enemy fire streaked past, missing by inches. Ethan's hands shook, but he held steady, following Lyra's precise movements. They reached the energy core. Lyra's hands moved with lightning speed, connecting small devices to the core, diverting energy in precise sequences. Ethan assisted, monitoring systems and rerouting power with his engineering knowledge. Together they worked in harmony, the small human and the petite alien against a massive enemy force. The core began to overload, glowing brighter and brighter. Ethan's heart raced. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the station trembled under the strain. Lyra's eyes met his. Almost there. Trust me. With one final adjustment, the core erupted in a controlled detonation. Energy cascaded outward, striking the enemy frigate and disabling its weapons. The massive ship shuddered, then drifted helplessly. The remaining enemy ships, seeing their leader incapacitated, retreated rapidly into space. Ethan collapsed to the floor, exhausted. Lyra knelt beside him, her golden eyes soft and warm. You did well, my husband, she said quietly. You were brave, Ethan blinked. Husband, we just fought for our lives, she smiled, brushing a tendril of hair from his forehead. Bravery is part of the bond. Standing with me, protecting each other, surviving together, that makes us partners. That is what a true bond requires. Ethan looked at her, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's emergency lights. She had been so small, so cheerful, so unassuming when he first met her. And now she had shown him strength, courage, and loyalty beyond anything he had imagined. And somehow he had discovered courage within himself, too. The station slowly returned to calm. Repairs began, and the remaining crew emerged from hiding. They looked at Ethan and Lyra with a mix of awe and disbelief. The human and the petite Valari woman had faced impossible odds and survived. Ethan stood, brushing off dust and sparks. Lyra mirrored him, her smile gentle now, filled with pride. The bond is no longer theoretical, she said. We have faced challenge, danger, and chaos together. Now we are truly matched. Ethan nodded, finally understanding. This wasn't about forced marriage, algorithms, or protocol. It was about trust, courage, and standing by someone in impossible circumstances. I think I understand now, he said slowly. It's not about being matched. It's about choosing to be together. Lyra's smile brightened. Exactly. And I choose you, Ethan. Not because of protocol, not because of algorithms, but because of who you are. Ethan felt a smile tug at his lips. Then, I choose you too, Lyra. I guess I always have. The two of them stood together in the docking bay, the station around them humming with renewed life. The enemy threat had been repelled, but the real victory was the bond they had formed. A human and a petite alien, matched by fate but strengthened by choice. For the first time, Ethan felt he was not just a simple engineer. He was a partner, a teammate, a protector. And beside him was someone extraordinary, a petite alien woman with golden eyes and boundless courage, who had chosen him as her husband. Lyra reached for his hand, and he took it without hesitation. Her grip was small but firm, a promise and a reassurance. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy threw at them. Together, they would survive. And together they would write the story of a bond no enemy could break. As the stars outside the viewport shimmered, Ethan realized that his life, once ordinary and safe, had become extraordinary. And somehow he felt ready for it. With Lyra at his side, the universe no longer felt intimidating. It felt full of possibility, and in that moment he understood the truth of her words. They were not just matched by algorithms, not just paired by tradition. They were matched by courage, by trust, and by the undeniable spark of connection that neither technology nor distance could ever erase. He looked at her once more, golden eyes shining with warmth. "All right, Lyra," he said softly. "Let's see what comes next. Together." Lyra smiled, brighter than any star, and replied, "Yes, Ethan, together." The twin suns of Valoria dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the palace courtyard. Princess Lyra stood at the top of the marble steps, her hands clasped tightly, her heart beating like a drum. The royal hall behind her echoed with the murmurs of council members, noble families, and visiting dignitaries. She had spent her entire life being told she was not enough. Half Valorian, half from a rival species long despised by her people, Lyra had always been the shadow no one wanted to claim. Her bloodline was considered impure, her very existence a challenge to tradition. And now, as she stood in the center of the grand hall, the reality of her situation pressed down on her chest like a stone. No one had come forward. No suitor had offered a hand, no noble had extended support. She had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that someone might see past her heritage and recognize the strength she had cultivated through years of discipline, learning, and perseverance. But hope had a way of breaking under the weight of repeated rejection. Lyra felt it in every sideways glance, in every whispered comment that floated like poison through the air. "She is not fit to rule. She is too weak. Too strange." Words like daggers had cut into her soul for years, and yet she had endured. But today, the weight felt heavier than ever. At that moment, the doors of the hall burst open with a metallic clang that silenced the whispers. Guards scurried to attention as a figure was brought forward. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. The council had captured someone from the human vessel that had crash-landed near the outskirts of Valoria. Humans were considered primitive, unrefined, and dangerous in unpredictable ways. Their presence was usually met with suspicion, or in some cases outright hostility. And yet here was one of them, standing uncertainly on the marble floor, eyes darting from one towering Valorian to another. The human was young, perhaps no older than 25, with tousled dark hair and clothes that had clearly survived a rough journey through the planet's wild landscapes. His hands were bound, though not tightly, as if the guards were uncertain whether they were holding a prisoner or a guest. Lyra felt a strange curiosity rise within her. Humans were alien to her, yes, but they were also resilient in ways Valorians often underestimated. She had read about them in historical archives, stories of their resourcefulness, their ability to endure situations that would have broken other species. Still, curiosity alone was not enough to sway the council. Council members leaned forward, their expressions a mix of amusement and scorn. "Princess Lyra," one said, his voice dripping with condescension, "you have been abandoned by every worthy noble. Even the strongest warriors have refused your hand. Perhaps it is time to face reality. Perhaps your destiny lies not in marriage, but in solitude." Lyra's chest tightened. The word stung, but she refused to show it. Solitude had always been her companion, and she had learned to survive in its cold embrace. But now, when the fate of her planet hung in balance, solitude was not enough. She needed a partner, someone who could stand by her not because of political obligation, but because they chose to. And for the first time, an idea formed in her mind that both terrified and inspired her. She stepped forward, her voice clear and steady despite the pounding of her heart. "I will choose my partner myself," she declared. The hall fell silent. Not a noble, not a warrior, but someone who can see me for who I am, not for the title I carry or the blood I bear. All eyes turned to the human. Ethan Cole. He blinked in confusion, unsure why a Valorian princess was speaking directly to him, or why she seemed to be seeking his attention in a hall filled with powerful elites. Some nobles began to snicker, others shook their heads in disbelief. The council murmured urgently among themselves. It was unheard of for a princess to make such a declaration. It was madness, and yet there was no stopping her now. Lyra's gaze did not waver. "Human," she said softly, walking closer, her hands unclasped and relaxed. "Will you be my husband?" The words hung in the air like fragile glass, trembling but unbroken. Ethan's mind raced. Was this a trap, a test, or was it a genuine plea from someone who had been rejected by everyone else? He studied her face, noticing for the first time the vulnerability beneath the regal poise, the hope that flickered in her eyes despite years of rejection. She was not asking because she needed a servant or a pawn. She was asking because she wanted someone who would choose her willingly. The council erupted in chaos. Noblemen shouted, guards muttered among themselves, and whispers spread like wildfire through the hall. Some were outraged, seeing this as an insult to Valorian tradition. Others were curious, sensing that something unprecedented was about to unfold. But Lyra did not flinch. She had made her choice, and nothing could sway her now. Ethan stepped forward cautiously, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. He had been trained for survival, for engineering and problem-solving, but never for diplomacy or politics. Yet in this moment, he realized that his actions could determine the fate of an entire planet. And more than that, he realized that this woman, rejected by all, had chosen him, an ordinary human, as her partner. It was an honor he could scarcely comprehend. I need to understand, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. Why me? Why would you ask someone like me? Lyra smiled faintly, a mixture of sadness and hope. Because no one else saw me. No one else wanted me. You are a stranger, yes, but you are not bound by the prejudices of my world. You see people for what they are, not what they should be. That is all I have ever wanted. The sincerity in her voice struck a chord deep within him. He looked around the hall again at the faces filled with doubt, fear, and judgment. And then he looked at her. Not a princess, not a political symbol, but a human being just like him, searching for acceptance, searching for someone to stand beside her. It was a moment that changed everything. He nodded slowly, feeling a sense of resolve he had never known before. I will consider your offer, he said carefully, but only if I can speak with you alone. I need to understand the world I am stepping into. The council erupted once more, but Lyra simply inclined her head. She had expected resistance, expected disbelief. What she had not expected was the human's willingness to even listen. That small act of consideration was more than any noble had ever offered her. In the quiet of her chambers later, away from the watchful eyes of the council and the nobles, Lyra and Ethan spoke at length. She told him about her life, the years of rejection, the constant struggle to be seen for who she truly was. She spoke of her people, their traditions, and the challenges she faced as someone who straddled two worlds. Ethan listened intently, asking questions, showing a level of empathy and curiosity that touched Lyra's heart. You have faced more than I ever could imagine, Ethan said finally, and yet you stand here strong and determined. I admire that. Lyra's eyes shone with a mixture of gratitude and relief. I have no choice but to be strong, she replied. But I also have the right to choose someone who will stand with me, not for duty, but because they want to. Ethan considered her words. On Earth, he had been unnoticed, an ordinary man with no titles or glory. But here, in this alien world, he had a chance to make a difference, not through power or wealth, but through his actions, his choices, and his willingness to see a person for who they truly were. And in that moment, he made a decision that would alter the course of Valoria forever. I will stand with you, he said firmly. Not because I am forced to, not because it is expected, but because I choose to. For the first time in years, Lyra felt the warmth of genuine hope. She had been rejected by all, yet she had found someone who saw her worth. And though the path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges from noble houses, political turmoil, and the ever-present danger of war, she no longer faced it alone. For the first time, she had a partner, someone who would face the unknown with her, someone who would not see her as a burden, but as an equal. Outside, the wind of Valoria's twin suns whispered through the marble columns of the palace. A new chapter was beginning, not just for Lyra, but for the planet itself. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light across the halls, both human and princess knew that together, they could face anything.